word that comes to my mind is people getting abused.
Cruel. Horrible.
Dark.
Abuse.
Violent.
Probably hurt.
So, who's there? Chris, so I like to post on Instagram.
It's just an actor that I like.
Sure, but you've been sleeping with him too.
No, he's just my favorite actor. What do you mean?
You're worthless, pathetic, and nothing without me.
Oh my god, are you okay? Yeah. I'm fine. Maybe you should go with the nurse. No, I'm okay.
Hey Jade, did you see today?
See what?
I saw Marley get thrown into the lockers by Sebastian.
What?
Yeah, I think she might be in an abusive relationship, but she won't say anything, either because she's too scared or she just doesn't want to. When she covered it up, it was so obvious something was going on.
Well, I know that the YWCA has this whole thing for domestic violence and relationship abuse.
Should we go talk to them? I mean, if the YWCA can help others, they can surely help her. We could talk to whoever runs the place. Then again, she does need to hear what they have to say.
Well, she's not going to be able to get away from Sebastian.
Fine, you and I can go and talk to someone.
Well, that's a good idea because all you told me is that she got hurt by Sebastian. I don't know if she's in an abusive relationship or not.
Exactly, we need to educate ourselves before we can help her.
Well, yeah, let's go together and we can see what they say about this kind of thing. Ask some questions?
Yeah, maybe ask for some pamphlets or something.
Alright, let's go tomorrow and talk to a counselor I know named Jahira.
We can talk to ourselves.
Okay.
Girls, stop talking.
Sorry.
So what is domestic violence?
Domestic violence is two people in an intimate relationship where one person is exhibiting a pattern of abusive behavior for one person to have power and control over another person. So it's not an equal relationship, it's one person having more power and control. And through 6 different types of abuse, they can exhibit this kind of abusive behavior. A lot of it's emotional abuse, it's the number one most common type of abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, or digital abuse. Some relationships have all 6 types of abuse, some only have one type of abuse, like verbal and emotional abuse. Some people have the physical abuse in the relationship, so it really depends. But through these types of relationships, that's where the person, the abuser, tries to maintain, or to get and maintain power and control.
Okay, so when does the abuser become the abuser? So when does it start?
An abuser, right off the bat is not abusive or doesn't show those abusive tendencies. So a lot of times, I'd say you go on the first date, if the person exhibits kind of behaviors that are controlling, you will notice it and you'll be like, oh, I don't want to date this person again. So it's kind of, it's kind of happens subtly where maybe the 5th date or so, or maybe now that you're established that you're boyfriend and girlfriend, that's where they'll slowly start to be like, oh, I don't want you hanging out with that person, or, kind of putting down these rules of this is what I want you to do, this is what I don't want you to do, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. If you really loved me, you would do so and so things. So it doesn't happen right away. It happens slowly. And by the time that you realize that you are in an abusive relationship or that person's trying to control you, a lot of times it's, you either have no more friends, you've been isolated, you feel kind of stuck in the relationship, your self-esteem is so low that you don't feel like you could actually leave the relationship by the time that you realize that you're in it. So it's not something that happens, you start talking to the person and the next day they're abusive. It doesn't happen that way because, people would be smart enough to be like, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to end up in this relationship, that's not going to happen to me. So it happens slowly. And you also, if you think about it, you kind of start to build trust with that person, right? If it happens slowly, you start to really like that person.
So they basically in the relationship build you up so they can beat you down?
In a way, yeah. A lot of people, when I do these presentations to the middle schoolers, I have girls, even boys, being like, oh, I would never be in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be me, And because they're so strong and their attitude, on feminism, right? We all know about strong women. But the whole point is, like you said, if you go on a first date, it's not going to happen right away because hopefully a lot of girls are strong enough and are learning about this, and boys too. So you would think, no, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to let somebody treat me that way. But it's basically you're building that trust with that person. They know so much about you. You've had great memories together. You go on great dates, whatever it is, and then it starts to happen slowly. So it's really, it happens slowly.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things that can happen to people in abusive relationships?
When they are in the relationship still,
Yeah.
or after they leave the relationship?
I guess both.
Okay, so when they are in the relationship, I guess some warning signs, are you trying to say? How can you recognize it?
Yeah.
Or what can affect them? So Traditionally, like what we've seen with people, every relationship, it depends, right? A lot of times it just really depends on the dynamics and what the abuser is kind of asking of the victim. So this doesn't happen to everyone, but what we've seen with most people is that they become very isolated, so they stop hanging out with their friends. Also, they'll, if you're a friend of the person, you start to notice that your friends kind of just change around you. So maybe when you're hanging out with, let's say, the girl, by yourself, she's fine, she's normal, she's talkative, she's not really tense, it's not awkward, but then when she's with her boyfriend, if the boyfriend's abusive, then she's a bit more quiet, she's not as talkative, she changes around you. Maybe he does all the talking, or you can also notice, these are some warning signs too, is that she can't do anything without him, like she's always with him. They basically like don't have a separate life, right? They're like meshed into one. That's usually not a good sign. And a lot of times it's because he could be saying stuff like, I don't want you hanging out with that person without me, or I don't trust your friends, so can we spend time together? So stuff like that. So it's more about like they don't have a separate life apart from that person. In the winter time or in the summertime, a lot of times like they might be covering up, especially if it's physical abuse, they might be covering the bruises. A lot of times too, like they'll make up excuses for why they don't show up to somewhere, or they'll cancel plans last minute, and they don't really give a good excuse as to why they do that. But basically overall, like, you all know your friends, right? And so you'll notice when something's off, especially when they start dating somebody, friends kind of know from each other, like who's dating who, and so you'll know who your friend is dating. And then if things just start to change, if your friend starts to change, if you know him too, who's abusive, and he's kind of, things are just different around you guys, and you guys even feel like something's wrong, a lot of times, you have to really follow that feeling, like something's not okay here, or the relationship is not, something's wrong in the relationship. And it's really up to you guys to really try and talk to that person and, try and figure things out, instead of being like, oh, I don't, something's wrong, but I don't want to get involved,
Why do people who are in abusive relationships stay in those relationships?
Well, that is a really tough question. A lot of people actually don't stay in abusive relationships. A lot of them do leave. The shelters that we know about right now in Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, like all the states that are around Connecticut are actually all full, which showing us that women are leaving, because the majority of them are women. So they are leaving these relationships, but some of them don't leave because of fear, right? They're really afraid that their abuser will hurt them, will threaten to hurt themselves, they'll do damage to themselves. Or that they can hurt somebody else, a family member. Sometimes they use the children. Sometimes they'll threaten a family member or something. So there's that fear aspect. There's also like hope, right? So like if he promises that he'll never do it again, and I'm so sorry, and I promise I'll be the best boyfriend ever now, and whatever happened that month or whatever, or yesterday, that was just yesterday, like let's move on, like I promise I'll change. So they really hold on to that hope that, like hopefully, I really believe him, I think that he will really change. Especially, it makes it complicated when you have children, because that's also like the father of your kids, and maybe you've been with that person forever, for such a long time, that you really just can't see yourself alone and starting over, especially having kids. So it's really hard. There's also just resources too, right? Like I know here in Greenwich we see a lot of financial abuse. So, maybe the credit cards are under his name, the house is under his name, the car's under his name. So if she wants to leave him, she knows she has to start from zero. And that's really difficult, especially, in this community. It's a pretty wealthy town. It's not just that you have this beautiful house or nice car. It's also just access to your own social life, right? Maybe you go to the country club and your friends know you there, and they would never suspect that you're in an abusive relationship. To disclose that you do, to never show up to that, or if you don't discuss or disclose that you're in an abusive relationship, but then you out of nowhere just like leave and you never show up to that country club because you don't have that money to pay for it. A lot of people will start talking. So it's a lot of times for adults and for teens, it's a lot of that social pressure too, that people don't know that you're in an abusive relationship. So now that you're breaking up, people will ask questions, and then they're like, well, I didn't know, and oh my gosh, but he's so this and he's so that, and he's a very charming person, or I really liked him, or he's a father of your kids, like how like are you sure, like it kind of, there's all this like social pressure to like stay with that person. So there's just so many reasons for why somebody would stay, but those I think are like the top ones, like why somebody would stay. So fear, hope, that social pressure from family, from friends, from other people as well, and then the lack of resources a lot of times, right? Especially if it's financial abuse, they just don't have the resources or the money. Maybe they haven't worked in a really long time to support the kids and to take care of the house, and then out of nowhere they have to start working now, and to find a job it's complicated, to find a babysitter, all this stuff. So it's really complicated, but those are really the main top reasons for why somebody would stay in it. Mm-hmm.
What are some serious and permanent effects of being in an abusive relationship?
The number one most serious effect that I can think of right now is the trauma that the victim experiences while in the relationship. So it doesn't really matter if it's physical abuse or emotional abuse. Actually, what we've heard from clients directly is that the physical abuse, yes, it hurts, right? The person is physically hurting you and they leave you a bruise, but the bruise eventually fades away. But that emotional piece to it where somebody's, the person that you love is calling you names, putting you down, making you feel worthless, saying things like, you're lucky I'm still with you, or nobody would want to date you, you look like this or you look like that. And, that really plays with your head and it stays with you. So to reverse that way of thinking, especially if you've been with the person for years, it's really, really difficult. And for us, the first thing that we do when we see a victim who's been traumatized, who really believes that they are not worthy of another relationship or a good relationship, we really try and work with them to say, what do you want to do and who are you? What do you like to do? Because they're so focused on making him happy that they forget about themselves and what they like to do and who they are. So the first thing to end this abusive relationship is to ask themselves, what do you like to do? Who are you? What's fun for you? Who are your friends? What are things that you like to do that are fun for you? So that's one thing that we try and work with clients on is that. So the trauma is the number one most thing that we see in everyone, because sometimes the abusive relationship will end and then they get into another relationship, the victim, and because they're so traumatized from the abuse that happened, they think that the next person is going to be abusive too, which to be honest with you, it's kind of a good thing, to be honest, just because they're more aware of the signs and warning signs. But sometimes, especially if the other person is, it's a healthy person, they're very respectful of their partner, it really changes the relationship, or it can affect the relationship, because it could be a healthy relationship, but that victim is still waiting for something bad to happen.
How do we stop domestic violence?
Well, if you are in a relationship, how do you stop it if you're in a relationship is that you could speak up, you could say something, right? So the victim should definitely be connected with me, with our agency. They could call the hotline, they can walk to the YWCA and say, they need help. That's a good way to, maybe not just stop it, but to learn more about what's going on and then keep themselves safe in the relationship.
To prevent it?
Well, preventing is more before it happens, but they could stop it from at least getting, or preventing from it getting more dangerous in the future. So definitely, prevention. But in terms of in general, how to stop it, it's really just educating people, informing them, right? One of the things that I do is prevention work, right? So before you guys start dating, we go to the 6th graders before they start dating. Hopefully they're not dating yet, but if they are, that's okay too. But we talk to them about what's a healthy relationship, what's an unhealthy relationship, with friendships more. But then we go back when they're in 8th grade and we say, this is what teen dating violence is. This is what's healthy. This is what's unhealthy. So people have to actually start talking about what is a healthy relationship, because a lot of teenagers don't talk to their parents about a healthy relationship, or just relationships in general. So you guys figure out on your own, what is a healthy relationship? What do I value? Who do I want to be in a relationship? Who do I want my partner to be in the relationship? And so you have to figure that out on your own, since we don't have that conversation. And you guys are going to get it wrong, because adults get it wrong all the time. So you guys are going to get the relationships wrong too. And relationships are so complicated that sometimes something can happen and you might think that it's abusive, but maybe it's not, or sometimes something can happen you don't think it's abusive at all, but it really is, so it's really just about spreading that awareness, educating each other, talking about it, feeling comfortable to talk about it, right? And then just also making it your business, right? A lot of times you might know something, where you guys all got the presentation that I gave you, and you know about it, you can recognize the signs, but sometimes we still kind of feel I know it and I can see it, but I don't want to. Well, you don't want to make it part of your business, right? You're kind of I don't want to get involved in their relationship, right? And it's really if it's happening in public, if it's happening in your face, it is now your business, you know, because as they're doing it in front of you, you know, so you should kind of figuring out whether it's talking to me, calling the hotline and asking like, how do I intervene in a good way? What can I do? How can I help a friend out? You know, and I think that's how you end it. But again, it's also just again in society, you end it by educating yourself, by talking about it. So yeah, there's just so many ways to do it, but that's a really big way.
What is some advice for people who are in abusive relationships?
Some advice. It's really important for them to know that it's not their fault for what they're experiencing. A lot of them feel like they're the ones that are to blame for what's going on. Victims, a lot of times they say, I'm so stupid, you know, I should have left him the first time that he hit me, or I should have left the first time that he treated me this way. So they really are blaming themselves and feel guilty for staying in it. So the first thing that we always say to somebody is, I believe you, number one. Thank you for telling me the story, because a lot of times victims stay in silence, right? They don't want to reveal what's going on. They're ashamed, they're humiliated. So they say, thank you so much for telling me. You know, it's not your fault, I believe you, right? To like validate what's going on. Because sometimes, you know, the abuser will say things like, what do you mean I was like this, right? Treated you like that? You're overthinking this, or you're just really stressed out about so and so things, and that's why you think that I'm being like this, you know. And so the victim kind of believes like, okay, you know what, maybe I am overthinking this stuff, or you know, maybe I don't know what I was thinking, that he wanted me to do this and this. He's not abusive. And so we validate it. We say, yeah, that sounds like it's an abusive relationship, or I'm so glad that you came in. So really just believing them, validating for them, saying it's not your fault. Another thing is like, you don't deserve to be treated this way, which sounds kind of cheesy if you think about like now that I'm saying it to you guys, but for a victim, like to hear those things, it's so powerful for them, because again, they might be going through this on their own. They don't share it with anyone, they don't tell anyone. So when they finally tell someone, and then that person says, wow, thank you so much and I believe you, that's super powerful for them. So you know, saying that and saying you don't deserve to be treated this way. Another thing too, more of if you're the friend and you know someone's being abused, it's really important to be specific with them and say, you know, instead of being like a lot of friends, you know, you hear this say, oh, that your boyfriend's like such a jerk, like why are you with him? And if you think about it, that's just not helpful at all, right? That comment, because they're just gonna be like, I don't care what you think, number one, or you know what, like you don't understand me or whatever, and then they're gonna just not want to talk to you about this. But if you say, hey, you know, that time that we were at this party, or that you were at my house and he was there and he said this and this to you, that made me feel uncomfortable. You know, how do you feel? You know, and that kind of like just opens up the conversation for you guys to talk about it, to see what's going on. And it also lets them know, the victim, that you're worried for them. You know, it's kind of like putting it on yourself, like I'm worried, or this made me feel uncomfortable, or this made me like worried for you. How do you feel? You know, so that's like also just really good advice for a friend to say to someone, instead of criticizing and jumping right ahead to like judging them.
I think I have like the answer to this question already, but like if you have like a friend that you already knew like was in an abusive relationship and they finally got out of it, and like they're telling you, shouldn't you like not say I'm so sorry, because it'll make them feel like weak? Because usually when you say, oh, I'm so sorry about that, like it usually will, like, would that make them feel worse already?
Not really. I think it depends on how you say it. So if you're just like, I'm so sorry for you, you know, like that, like in that way or in that tone, like of course they're gonna be like, oh, what, you know. But if you're like, wow, I'm so sorry that happened, like how, like what else, like tell me more, like you're showing like you really are concerned, then you know, really it changes it. So I think it's really the tone of how you say it. And also it's like, I say this all the time too when we give presentations, like it's really good to like look at them, like make eye contact, get close to them and be like, I'm so sorry that happened, you know, like really look at them and like let them feel that you really do care, instead of being like, oh, that sucks, you know, like, you know, or, oh, like, I believe you, you know, like, you can show with body language, with your tone, if you really care or not, and that person will know too, you know. So it's really important that if you really care about it and you're concerned, to let them know, you know, and to also figure out how to do it in your own way too, right? Like, I can give you guys like all these like lists of things to say, but if it doesn't sound like you, then it will feel awkward, and then that person will be like, they're not being truthful with me, you know. So you have to kind of figuring out, and figure out on your own way, how would you say it, you know. So even
imagine you're talking to yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even like I know when I was going through this training, when I was before I had to pick up the hotline, and I remember like before I picked up the hotline, I was like looking at the phone, and I was like nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, like who's gonna be on the other line? But then I remember my coworker said, just act like it's your friend, like you're talking to your friend over the phone, and then they revealing this something that happened in their relationship, and how would you handle it? These are certain things that you should say. Make sure they're safe, make sure that if they need any medical help, there are certain things that you have to ask that maybe you wouldn't ask your friend. But overall, you're basically talking to a friend, right? So show concern, make that eye contact, be actively listening, right? As if it is your friend. And I'm like, oh, and that was really helpful for me, right? So it's the same situation. Like a lot of times, if somebody discloses, you kind of think like it's an extreme situation. Like, oh my God, my friend's gonna tell me that like he pulled her hair and it was physical, and you think of something so crazy and extreme because that's what we hear about domestic violence. But it can be something as simple as like, I was hanging out with my boyfriend the other day and he called me a name, and it made me feel a certain way. And then just asking your friend like, oh, and why did he call you that? How did you feel? Like just asking those questions, And then I think when you do that, you let them know that you are concerned, and it's just okay to talk about it, I think you guys are always talking about the relationship with your friends, and you guys know so much about your friends, and they go to you first for anything. So it's just normal that you would talk about relationships, and so just kind of picking up on what is healthy, what's unhealthy, and then if you pick up something that somebody says that might be unhealthy, just ask more questions. It's really just that simple. Yeah.
Hey, Marley. Oh, hey, Anya. So, how are you? Fine. Really? Because yesterday I kind of saw Sebastian kick you out of a chair and then drag you. It looked kind of forceful. It was nothing. Is that a gash on your arm? I just fell on a branch. Are you sure? Because I wanted to talk to you because I think you might be in an abusive relationship. What makes you say that? Well, I went to the YWCA the other day and I talked to this counselor. Her name's Yahira. She gave me a lot of information and even told me some of the warning signs. Like what? Well, here's a pamphlet she gave you. Has Sebastian ever tell you that no one else will ever go out with you, or try to stop you from seeing or talking to any friends or family? Or even did he try to force you to have sex, or hit, push, choke, or kick you? I don't know. Well, are you afraid of Sebastian? Sometimes. Well, read this.
Trouble. I'll trip and
My God. I think I am in this relationship. Thank you for telling me. And I believe you. That means a lot. Thank you for this. But what do I do? Don't go near Sebastian. Don't talk to him. I live with Sebastian. Well, you can sleep at my house tonight, and we'll contact your parents, let them know what's going on. We'll make sure that you're safe. I'm glad you told me. I'm glad you helped me realize I was in an abusive relationship. Well, that's what friends are for.
no matter what'll come to be, our love is all we need to make it through. 'Cause you're here with me, and nothing's ever gonna take us down. No, 'cause nothing can keep me from loving you. And you know it's true. It don't matter what'll come to me. Our love is all we need to make it through. Oh, we'll make it through. Our love is all we need. Is all we need to make it through.